James Carter, a 68-year-old real estate mogul, sat in his black Tesla on the side of a quiet Alabama highway, frustration creeping into his features. The summer sun blazed overhead, and the air conditioning struggled to keep the heat at bay. James, a man who had built an empire from the ground up, was used to solving problems with a quick phone call. But today, his phone had no signal. With a sigh, he stepped out of his car, examining the flat tire that had left him stranded. Just as he was about to resign himself to waiting, he noticed a figure approaching. A teenage boy, maybe 15 or 16, wearing a slightly oversized t-shirt and well-worn sneakers, jogged toward him with a determined look. "You need some help, sir?" the boy asked, his voice steady but friendly. James hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, got a flat. Was trying to call for help, but no luck." The boy grinned. "No worries. My uncle's a mechanic. He taught me how to change a tire last year. You got a spare?" James gestured toward the trunk, watching as the boy got to work with a quiet confidence beyond his years. James was used to people doing things for money, favors, or connections. But this kid, he wasn't asking for anything. In less than 10 minutes, the boy wiped his hands on his jeans and stood up. "You're good to go," he said with a proud smile. James pulled out his wallet and extended a few crisp bills. "I really appreciate it, son. Here." The boy took a step back, shaking his head. "No need. Just glad I could help." James blinked, momentarily stunned. "Are you sure?" The boy nodded, already turning to walk away. James watched him go, disappearing into the distance, the interaction leaving a strange impact on him. That night, sitting in his penthouse apartment, James found himself thinking about the boy. Over the years, he had encountered thousands of people, investors, business partners, employees. Yet none had left an impression quite like this young man. Why did it bother him so much? Was it guilt, gratitude, something else? The next morning, James made a decision. He needed to find that boy. His search took him to a small town about an hour away, where he asked around at gas stations and diners, describing the kid who had helped him. Finally, an elderly man at a local grocery store nodded. "Sounds like Marcus. Good kid. Lives with his grandma over on Maple Street." James took down the address and drove through the town, taking in the modest homes and old storefronts. Eventually, he found the house, a small, weathered home with a porch swing that had seen better days. He hesitated before knocking. An older woman answered, her eyes sharp but kind. "Can I help you?" "Good morning, ma'am. My name's James Carter. I think I met your grandson yesterday." "Marcus?" She smiled. "Ah, that sounds like him. Always helping people. What did he do this time?" "He changed my flat tire," James said, still amazed by the boy's kindness. "Wouldn't take a dime for it. I just wanted to thank him properly." The woman nodded and stepped aside. "He's out back, working on the fence. You're welcome to say hello." James followed her through the house, taking in the simple but warm surroundings. Pictures of family members lined the walls. The furniture was old but well kept. It reminded James of where he had grown up, before wealth, before status, before success had taken him far from places like this. In the backyard, Marcus was hammering a board into place when he noticed James. "Hey, mister," Marcus said, brushing dirt off his hands. "What are you doing here?" James chuckled. "Came to thank you properly. What you did yesterday, it stuck with me." Marcus shrugged, his expression genuine. "Wasn't a big deal." "It was to me," James replied, voice firm. "Most people don't help strangers without expecting something in return." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "I don't see it that way. If you can help, why wouldn't you?" James exhaled slowly, taking in the boy's words. There was a purity in his thinking, something James hadn't seen in a long time. Looking around, he noticed the yard was well kept, but the house needed repairs. The fence was patched with whatever wood they could find, and the roof had seen better days. "You've got a good head on your shoulders," James said. "Your grandma must be proud." Marcus grinned. "She raised me right." James hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "I'd like to do something for you and your family." Marcus's expression shifted slightly, cautious now. "We're okay, mister. We don't need anything." "It's not about need," James said. It's about doing what's right. James spent the next few weeks making calls, pulling strings and setting things in motion. Soon, trucks and workers arrived at Marcus's house, ready to renovate. As the repairs started, Marcus and his grandma stood on the porch in awe. "You really didn't have to do this," she said, her voice thick with emotion. James smiled. "Maybe not. But you and Marcus reminded me of something I forgot a long time ago. It's not about what you have. It's about what you give." Over the following weeks, the house transformed. The roof was fixed, the porch reinforced, and the yard cleaned up. Inside, new furniture replaced the worn-out pieces, and the kitchen received much-needed upgrades. At first, Marcus tried to help with the work, sweeping and lifting whatever he could, but James pulled him aside. "Your job," he said with a smile, "is to be a kid for a while." Still, Marcus couldn't resist watching the workers, asking questions about construction and tools. One of the contractors, a burly guy named Dave, noticed his interest and started teaching him the basics. Before long, Marcus was measuring wood planks and shadowing the workers like an apprentice. James watched from a distance, pride swelling in his chest. This boy had potential, and for the first time in years, James felt like he was doing something meaningful. By the time the project wrapped up, the house was more than just repaired. It was renewed. "This isn't just a house anymore," Marcus's grandma said, tears in her eyes. "It's a home again. I don't know how to thank you." James shook his head. "You already have. You reminded me what really matters." Marcus, standing nearby, looked up at James. "I've been thinking, I want to do something like this one day. Help people." James smiled and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You already are, Marcus. Never lose that." As the sun dipped below the horizon, laughter and warmth filled the air. James leaned against the newly built porch railing, sipping iced tea as neighbors stopped by with homemade treats, celebrating the home's transformation. For the first time in years, James Carter felt truly rich, and he knew this was just the beginning.